Good afternoon, then, everyone, as we are at the end of another week of trading on Friday, the 7th of June. Now, it's been a relatively messy week across financial markets. Some certain things reacting in different ways. But we started off with the manufacturing PMI on Monday. We'll have a look at the charts when we get around to it. But stocks reacting negatively to that when previously they'd reacted somewhat positively to weak economic data due to the fact that that brings forward the prospect of interest rate cuts. Now, stocks pushing lower off the back of this is probably how it should work in theory, right? And then you come around to the ISM services PMI on Wednesday, and they reacted positively to that, positively in line with, Nvidia reaching a $3 trillion market cap over the course of this week, and also becoming a more valuable company than Apple, which is crazy to think about when you say it. And also, if you had said that someone a year ago, they probably wouldn't have believed you. I'm not so sure I would have either. So, um, yeah, negativity to start the week in stocks, and there's some positivity brought back in with those services figures. Weak jobs figures on Tuesday didn't really go in line for us when we had NFP out today. Some solid downside in stocks, some solid upside in the dollar, maybe a bit more than you would expect after you see this unemployment rate actually tick up to 4%. So, when the print came out at 1:30, I kind of saw those NFP figures, and I thought you'd get a fairly quick retracement after, or at least a good chunk of a retracement after that unemployment rate came out of 4%. But that's not really what you've got. I mean, if you look at a slightly shorter time frame, you can see big upside across the US dollar across the board, and it's holding the lows here, but also and holding the highs across here. So that's probably not what you'd expect when the unemployment rate ticks higher. But strong NFP figures today, strong labor market, the US dollar has enjoyed that fact. Is it enough to spark a fresh wave of upside in the US dollar? I mean, American central bank certainly unlikely to cut interest rates at the same rate as their counterparts, as we did have a couple of a couple of central banks begin their interest rate cutting cycle. How deep that cutting cycle goes is a different question, and not something we got any clarification of over the course of this week. The markets are priced in a 75% chance of the Bank of Canada cutting interest rates on Wednesday. Cutting interest rates is exactly what they did, but declined to give any forward guidance on any further interest rate cuts. So, yeah, you got to look at the incoming economic data to think whether or not they are going to cut again. I mean, they will cut again, but when they cut again is the question that we need to answer. And that is the exact same from the ECB. No surprise that the ECB just cut interest rates and said we're going to take it by a meeting by meeting basis. And I have to monitor the incoming economic data to make our next decision. I could have told you that. I mean, you could have basically wrote the statement for them before they went and cut interest rates, but that was near 100% priced in from the ECB. The fact that there was a lack of clarification on any forward guidance in terms of future cuts, euro kind of popped higher a little bit off the back of that, but no major volatility from the ECB. 40 or 50 pip move higher, about 40 pip move higher or lower, should I say, in the Canadian dollar. Dollar CAD obviously moved higher, and that was compounded by some strong services data yesterday. So pretty solid upside yesterday in dollar CAD, kind of did retrace a good chunk of that. And then FP today has then pushed that higher. Equities are already well on their way to retracing some of that move. Half of it has already been retraced. Again, it just provides another dip to buy back into in equities, I suppose. US dollar, again, as I say, clinging onto those lows. What that means then going forward, I mean, US dollar has been relatively sideways, kind of lower to sideways over the last number of weeks. A bit of a double bottom here on the dollar index. Is that enough for it spark another wave of upside? I mean, I've said all along, I do think it does have some upside left in it, but short-term downside has been the case. Let's see if this is enough to spark it. Right, you got some levels coming in. The Australian dollar got good support down here at 65.90. Kiwi breaking through a trend line with this, you'd have to think kind of 60, 80, 60, 90 would be your next port of call down there on the Kiwi. Euro dollar coming down to a support level down here. You have a look then at cable coming down to a trend line, coming down to a support level down at 127. So there's a few levels on the downside on the way, and the downside across here. Dollar CAD coming into this bit of upside, and if that's definitely a bit of a resistance level to keep an eye on dollar CAD, because if that pushes higher, you got strength in US dollar. Bank of Canada started cutting interest rates. Should be a fairly simple trade on that one. So you'd have to hope for US dollar strength to come through now. The ECB, the Bank of Canada, leading the way on interest rate cuts. Well, I mean, the Swiss National Bank led the way on interest rate cuts, but now these have followed suit. So US not likely to follow suit anytime soon, you would have to imagine. So is that the start of some dollar upside? You have to imagine a good chunk of it was largely priced in, but again, now that this has come to fruition, in theoretically, you would expect the US dollar to push higher. That would be the assumption that you would make. Does it happen or not is another question. The market is hell bent on the Fed cutting interest rates. They want them to cut interest rates. Can't do that just yet. But we'll see how that pans out over the course of next week. We'll update more as and when we get to it. But have a nice weekend. Enjoy your couple of days break from financial markets, and we will reconvene on Monday for a look at the week ahead.